Hello and welcome back to Work on a Super Yacht. And if you want to get straight to the how of this video, please do skip ahead to the next chapter. But I'm going to start out with why. Why do we put leather protection on the mooring ropes? Well, as they say, a picture speaks 1,000 words, and I think you can see the problem here. In the Mediterranean, they really like to pack us in, and because of this, we end up sharing the mooring bollards with neighbouring yachts. Each yacht might run 3 of their own lines to the same bollard. That's 2 straight backs plus a spring, and then the neighbouring yacht does that also. So you end up with 6 lines all on the same bollard. And what happens is they all start chafing together like this, rubbing on each other. And this is particularly bad during the winter time because, of course, you get the swell rolling in, you get some high winds, the yachts are moving around a lot, and everything's just going like that. Of course, over time, all of this friction has the unfortunate result of damaging the mooring ropes. Furthermore, even if you're not sharing a bollard with a neighbour, just the friction of the line tight around the bollard, that's enough to start wearing through the cover of these mooring ropes, and eventually you'll go right through. Needless to say, this is where the leather protection comes in. As you can see, this is something that needs to be done periodically. Over time, the leather does wear down, it does wear through, but it will at least protect the mooring line. Here's an example of one I've just done, and now I'm going to show you how I did it. Okay then, so here I am on the main deck aft. Workshop's getting a little bit crowded, so I thought I'd come out here. Please do excuse my mooring line friend. He's getting a little bit squeaky. I've told him to just pipe down, but he won't have it. Here is the mooring rope that we're going to be protecting. 24mm braid on braid, or double braid. These aren't that thick, they're what we use as the spring lines, and I actually spliced this one myself yesterday. Not my finest work, there's almost no taper there at all, but solid, it's not going anywhere. Here is the leather that I'm going to be using. It's 2mm thick, smells like leather, tastes like leather. I mustn't do that, I'm a vegan. Anyway, must be leather. Bought it from the local chandlery. 130 euros for a square metre. Might sound like a lot, but if you were to buy this mooring line with an eye and leather on it already, you might pay an additional 150 euros just for the leather. So I'm going to do about 7 or 8 lines out of this. Other than that, it's just my time, a few tools, so saves the owner a bit of money. Of course, the first thing to do is to cut the leather to the size that we want. Remember that our rope is 24mm in diameter. I can take you back to some high school maths. Circumference of a circle, 2 pi r, where r is the radius. So 24mm diameter, 12mm radius, 2 times pi times r, about 75mm. I'm going to add an extra 5 because I'm a little bit edgy like that. That'll take it up to 80mm. However, I actually want to double back the edges of the leather. It's going to make it stronger, more durable. For that, I'm going to add an extra 50mm. So whatever the circumference is of your mooring rope, add an additional 50 to take care of that. I'll show you how I do that in a minute. In this case, 80mm plus the 50mm, that's 130mm width of leather to cut off this piece. Of course, I'm using blue tape to help me here. We use this pretty much for everything on deck. If the yacht's got a hole in it, a little bit of blue tape, that'll patch it up. I shall now take my metal straight edge and my knife, line it up with the blue tape, and cut my 130mm of leather. And there we have it, a nice 130mm wide strip of leather. I shall now put the remaining leather aside, remembering first to remove the blue tape, because I don't want to leave any residue on there next time I come back to cut it. And this is where you see eco-friendly Matthew coming into play. I like to keep the blue tape if I can. Maybe we'll need to use that in a moment. No need to keep taking stuff off the roll, just keep using that stuff until it's done. Next thing's next, and I want to square up the edges of this leather. Of course, cows are not square, although it would be funny if they were, but they're not. So I'm going to take my square ruler, 90 degrees, and we'll just cut it straight down the side. Unfortunately, I've got a bit of wastage there. But this irregular shaped cow shall not have died in vain. I will find a use for it. Maybe some earrings, a new strap for my watch, or maybe just a hat. Next job, and we've got to double over the edges of the leather. Remember what I said about doing that? It's going to make it much stronger, much more durable. I'm actually going to start by flipping my board over. It's got all those nasty cut marks on the other side. This is a lot more smooth. Won't scuff up my leather. I know it's going to get scuffed up anyway, but for now I like to keep it just perfect. So what I want to do is fold back the edges right along the length. And for this, start at one end. I measure in 15 millimeters, 1-5. And then I'm going to hit it with a hammer. It's the job for the engineers. They like hitting things with hammers. I'm joking. It's just a friendly bit of rivalry. I love you really. You let me borrow your tools all the time, as long as I put them back where I found them. The aim of the game is to use this hammer, or rather mallet, to just crease the leather where we want it, that 15 mil all the way along. Get a nice crease. We're basically just folding it, but of course 2 mil of leather, it's actually quite difficult to fold just with your hands, so I find a little bit of weight. That's going to make a nice crisp crease all along the length of the leather. Of course, just be careful not to hit your fingers, because that's really going to ruin your day. Alright then, that's one side done. Neatly folded over all the way along. Now I've just got to do the other side. Both edges overlapped, and that's running full length of the leather. It should now become clear why we added those extra 50 millimeters on top of the circumference of the rope, because once you've doubled both of the edges over by 15 mil each, plus the losses in the radius when you fold the leather over, what you're left with is pretty well exactly 80 mil, perfect to go around the circumference of the rope. The next job is to mark out the holes that we're going to use to stitch the leather together. And for that, I've made up this little template. Lots of little holes in a straight line, and they are 15 millimeters apart all the way along. I like to start the holes about 8 millimeters in from that folded edge. And I'll just place the template over the top. You see the center of that hole about 8 millimeters in from the edge, and then I'll just take a pencil and mark them in a nice straight line, 8 mil from the folded edge all the way along. I'll now just keep working my way all along that edge, and then once I've done there, I'll do the second edge. And we should have nicely aligned, equally spaced holes all the way down the length of the leather. All done. And it's important to realise that you're probably not going to get this perfect. You'll notice that my template isn't perfect and it's actually flexible. But the main thing is that you've got nice equal spacing, and there's an equal number of holes on either side of the leather. Now it's just a case of punching out the leather where we've marked. And for this, I'm using a hollow hole punch. This is 3 millimeters, which is going to be perfect for the rope that I'm going to use to stitch it all together. For this, we're going to need to use a proper hammer. And it's important to have a nice solid base. I don't want to use a metal base, because as you punch this through the leather, if it goes through onto the metal, it's actually going to blunt it. So instead, I like to use this nice little piece of high density polyethylene. It's just plastic. All you need to do is line up your hole punch with the marking that we made, take the hammer, and I find 2 nice solid punches should get you through. This actually reminds me of a school project we once had in technology, metalwork. We had to make these metal nameplates. Let's take a hammer, a punch with the lettering on it, on an anvil, and hammer out the letters. My technology teacher, Mr. Hallett, standing behind me. Hit it! This is what really sets the men from the boys. And I'm there like, I can't, I'm so scared. But I digress. I'm going to level we here. This setup I've got at the moment on the aft deck with this padding is not really helping me punch through the leather very well. So I'm going to head down to the workshop, finish off there, and I shall return with all of the holes perfectly punched out. I'm not doing too badly down here. I've got my safety spectacles on because my hammer told me to. Remember that we're punching through both sides of the leather in one go, so it does need a good solid punch. Now, if you'll excuse me, I've got a little more punching to do, and I shall see you back on the aft deck. It's finally done, and before we move on to the next step, just be sure to vacuum up all of the little leather circles that you've punched out, because they get everywhere. Kind of like Christmas tree needles when you take out the tree at the end of the holiday season. Then it's on to my favourite part, where we finally get to bring together the mooring rope and the leather. This is what I'm going to stitch it with. It's 3mm cord, perfect for the 3mm holes that we've just punched. I'm going to start by lining the leather up here. We're not going to do it super tight in the first instance, so we can always make some adjustment just so that we get the leather nice and equal around the eye. We'll take the first end of the cord. We move the leather into position, we can see it's a perfect fit, and we want to start by passing this end of the cord through this hole. And then want to measure out a length of cord, and I found that 1.75 times the length of the leather usually is enough. So I'll bring it all the way up there, back to about there. Personally, I like to leave the other end of the cord nice and long. It just means if we haven't pulled through enough slack, we can always make adjustments. If I go cutting it where I think it should be, we might end up not having enough cord, and of course that's not going to work. I'm then going to take that other end of cord and pass it through on the other side from the outside to the inside. And we can pull that all the way through, and that will allow me to show you the starting position. This then can be considered the starting position. You've got one end of cord going from outside to inside on this side of the leather, and the other end of cord going from outside to inside on the other side of the leather. And what you end up with is this nice bridge across the top. So that there is your starting point. To continue, what we're going to do is take each end of cord in turn, and we're going to pass from one side of the leather to the other, across the top of the mooring rope. So from outside to inside, we go across the mooring rope to the next hole, and we go from inside to outside. And I'll just do the same with the other end of the cord. We cross from here to here, through the next hole on this side, and pull it all through. So So they've now crossed on the inside. Now we need to cross back again, but this time we're going to go over the top. So I'll take this end of the cord. I'm going to go over the top from outside to inside. Sometimes it's a bit tricky to go through both layers of the leather. So let me pull it all through. And there it is. And then I do the same with the cord on this side, from here over to here. And certainly at the beginning it all does start to fall apart a bit while you're getting going. But stick with it, and that can be considered the first full round of crosses. Pull that all nice and tight. So now we're back where we started. Both pieces of cord on the inside again, and we just keep doing the same thing all the way along. That's how it looks when it's finished. If I open it up, I'll move the camera now, show you in detail exactly what I've done. I'm now going to continue working my way along this piece of leather, and I shall see you when I get to the other end. I got to the end and here she is, absolutely beautiful. Notice how the stitching is on the top, not on the inside or the outside, because that's where it's going to receive the most friction, so better off to have the stitching out of the way on the top. You'll also notice that where it finishes, the lines just happen to have come out on the outside, but I actually want them to finish on the inside, so what I'm going to do is run each end through the outside hole, and there it is. You can see I just pass the cord over to the opposite side. They now both come out of the bottom. It's not so easy to get two pieces of cord through the same hole, so I usually just use a pencil to push it through. Now I can cut off the cord. I'll do those about the same length, give us plenty of room to play with while we tie a reef knot to finish this off. So I'll just use a hot knife for this. Of course you could use scissors, but if you do, then the end of the cord is likely to fray like this. The end gets a little melted and it just holds the whole thing together. I then like to secure the whole thing with a reef knot. After that, I'll tie 2 figure-8 knots in each end of the cord, and that just holds the whole thing together nice and secure. To finish up, I'll use my hot knife again to cut the cord fairly close to the figure-8 knots, and then I'll take this tool here and just push those ends down inside the leather to keep it all nice and neat. I'm very happy with that, and I can now confidently send this line ashore and know that it's going to keep the yacht secure. For more Deckhand Duties videos, please do check out the rest of the playlist. With respect to this video, if you found some value in it, a like would be fantastic. A sub would be amazing. And I very much look forward to seeing you next time.